Good evening, everyone, and welcome. On behalf of the NASW New York chapter, thank you for joining us for the first event in our 2026 NASW New York CARES Social Work Month series, Social Work is a Profession, a Leadership Summit. We're grateful to have you here and especially thankful to our distinguished panelists for lending their time, expertise, and leadership to this critical conversation. Tonight, we gather to address an issue of profound importance to the social work field: the proposed reclassification of the MSW and DSW from professional degrees to general graduate degrees, effective July 1st of this year. This decision carries significant implications for the social work profession, the social work workforce, and the communities they serve nationwide. The strength, recognition, and integrity of social work education are foundational to who social workers are, and tonight's dialogue is an important step in understanding and responding to this change. Advocacy does not stop here with this conversation and these thoughts. Later this month, on March 27th, the NASW New York chapter, in collaboration with C.A.R.E.S Today, will host a day of solidarity. Participants may join us in person at a generously donated space provided by C.A.R.E.S Today with limited seating available, or virtually from anywhere. We encourage you to register for this as soon as possible. Those participating virtually will receive a digital toolkit to support these efforts throughout the day, along with access to chapter advocacy resources to support continued engagement on this issue and others impacting our profession. Before we begin tonight's panel discussion, our policy team has compiled a powerful video featuring submissions from our ongoing video campaign on the issue, with social workers across New York declaring proudly that social work is a profession. When the video concludes, we will begin the discussion with our guests. Amanda, please feel free to share your screen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Rodriguez. I'm one of the policy coordinators. We collected videos from individuals in the state, and here is what they are saying. You all can hear it.
And I'm a social worker in New York City. And yes, social work is a profession.
Social work is a profession.
Social work is not optional and it is not informal. It is a professional, skilled, and essential field.
Social work is a profession because healing can only happen in spaces of trust and safety.
Because without social work, I feel like I would not be where I am today.
I've been a social worker in our community for 18 years.
Social workers provide so many essential services, whether that's with mental health, community-based.
Social workers have very unique tools and approaches and training.
I think we show up in all different ways, in all different settings, everything from education to hospitals to government.
One of the most enjoyable, rewarding aspects I find about being a social worker is that you're able to connect people with resources that they may not be aware of. They may not know where to go to, who to turn to. This way, you can be that bridge to help them get to that next phase of their life.
What is social work? I mean, I guess it can take many forms and mean many different things to people, but I guess, just helping people find paths towards living their best life, whatever that looks like for them.
What does the social...
I believe that social workers are professional because we respond to crisis. We protect children, mental health, we work on many fields, and education are rude. We spend a lot of time learning how to serve the community.
Social work profession means to me, I got into social work because I believe strongly in social justice and helping people who are historically marginalized and oppressed and making sure that they can get the services that they need in order to not only survive, but ultimately thrive.
I am a social worker because social workers once advocated for me as an at-risk youth when I had no voice. Social workers connected me to resources and helped me to change my life for the better. For the past 5 years, I stood in that role, supporting vulnerable populations and helping people access critical systems of care.
This profession is essential, yet is on the verge of placing students in the financial predicament. The system should not make it harder for us to succeed if we're willing to put in the work.
I work in Medicaid managed care, supporting over 2 million New Yorkers by partnering with health systems on population health and clinical quality, strengthening both mental health and substance abuse treatment across the system. I help design transition of care workflows so people don't fall through the cracks.
Social workers are trained to build those spaces with intention, skill, and heart. We use evidence-based approaches to support healing, safety, and meaningful change in the populations we serve. Our profession is grounded in a code of ethics and strengthened by ongoing education and accountability.
There are some of the most amazing people out there helping communities and helping families and individuals.
We do so many things, we wear so many hats, and we really touch the lives of so many people, and it's really important and it's inherent that we continue to stay.
Social workers don't just show up. We build systems, we lead change, and we protect lives. Social work is a profession.
Our work saves lives, strengthens families, and holds communities together, and that must be recognized.
Social work helps save lives.
These are the reasons social work is and has always been a profession.
And here's our Join NASW link if you'd like to scan the QR code. But that was real raw footage of people on the ground, and we invite you to join that work. I'll drop my email in the chat if you'd like to get involved, and I'll pass it over to our amazing panelists and back to Angelique for a great discussion.
Thank you so much for sharing that video, Amanda. Without further ado, let me introduce you to our illustrious guests and leaders of social work in the profession, Dr. Shakira A. Kennedy, NASW New York Chapter's Executive Director, Dr. Gabriela McBride, the President of the New York State Social Work Education Association, Erica P. Sandoval, LCSW AWA, who is the Executive Director of Siembra Today, our partner in this collaboration, and Luisa Lopez, MSW SIFI, who is the President of the Latino Social Work Coalition. Once again, thank you all for being here and participating in this event. Let's get started right away, maximize our time. Dr. Kennedy, I'm going to start with you. How would reduced federal loan limits affect who can realistically pursue an MSW or DSW, particularly students from working class or marginalized backgrounds?
Yeah, so happy Social Work Month, everyone. So thank you so much for calling on me. So before I get to that, I really want to sort of talk about what exactly this proposal is, right? And then which is going to lead me into your question. So what is currently proposed by the Department of Education is to reclassify Masters of Social Work degrees, which are called MSWs, and also doctoral social work degrees, which are called DSWs, right, under the federal student aid rules, essentially making them ineligible for certain graduate loan structures currently available to professional programs, right, which you currently have now. So essentially, this means reduced federal borrowing limits for future students beginning July 1st, 2026. The date matters because that's the implementation threshold that we are currently under. So students enrolling on or after that date would face new loan caps that do not reflect the actual cost of graduate social work education. So the caps are $20,000 and $100,000 over the course of your education. And many of us, we're already in school. I was a former student myself, right? So I get that it's just impossible to pay for our social work degrees with $20,000 per semester, $100,000 over the lifetime. So that's really important. So this really essentially begins to create a structural funding gap that institutions and students will have to now absorb. So let me talk about how this reduced federal loan limits will begin to affect access, right? So what tends to happen is that these loan caps will disproportionately affect students without generational wealth. So if you don't have the money to pay, you will not have the money to go to school, right? In its short, basic terms. So social work has long been a pathway for first-generation college students working class students, career changers committed to serving their community, giving back, etc. But if students cannot borrow enough federally funded grants or federal loans to cover tuition or living costs, then they may end up delaying enrollment, choosing different professions potentially, or attend part-time while working to pay for their degrees, right? Which also, therefore, in turn, will increase the amount of time you take to complete your degree or not pursue graduate education at all, ultimately narrowing the pipeline into the profession.
Thank you so much. And with leading into that question, Louisa, how might this policy influence career choices, retention, and willingness to work in nonprofit, community-based, or public sector roles?
Thank you so much for the question, and happy, not so happy Social Work Month to us all. This is really where the damage compounds. The communities that need culturally competent, culturally humble, linguistically responsive social workers are communities of color. And those communities are overwhelmingly served by nonprofits, by community health centers, by community clinics, by city and state agencies, and by schools. These are not high-paying sectors generally. They really depend on social workers who have made a values-driven choice to forego higher salaries in other professions in exchange for work that is meaningful and critically, most importantly, for work that will lead to loan forgiveness. When you remove the eligibility for loan forgiveness, you make it inaccessible through forced private borrowing, which is essentially what this designation would do. You are fundamentally changing the math of the choice that we all made to become social workers and to become social workers either serving city or state agencies or in the nonprofit sector. So what we're going to see is social workers moving more towards private practice, towards higher paying clinical roles, or like Dr. Kennedy just said, leaving the profession altogether within the first few years. And that shortage, that workforce shortage that the Latino Social Work Coalition has been talking about now for 25 years, we're already at a crisis level in Black and Brown communities, in rural communities. That shortage is just going to deepen. So workers who remain are going to be more likely to be those that had access to family resources or wealth. Now, I don't know about my colleagues on the call here, but that does not apply to me. And I know it doesn't apply to a lot of the social workers that are working in the most vulnerable communities that we support. And what that means is that there's less diversity, there's less cultural competency, cultural humility, and less connections to the communities that need us the most.
Thank you so much for that. Dr. McBride, NASW and CSWE have raised concerns that this change would disproportionately impact women and people of color as being discussed. How does this proposal intersect with existing equity challenges in social work education?
I think I would pick up exactly where Louisa left off. We are already a majority white profession, and it is an ongoing challenge within social work education to educate social workers to be culturally relevant, linguistically competent, like Louisa said, and culturally humble as we work with people in our communities. And so I think NASW and CSWE are right to raise the alarm and to have us have this conversation because it's going to be a tremendous barrier. I think one of the things I was thinking about as Dr. Kennedy and Louisa were talking is also with the pressure to take out Graduate Plus loans, it decreases the ability to get public loan forgiveness. And I think that is a huge, huge piece of it because what you're also doing is for people who do not have generational wealth and who are going into a degree, cannot take out the Grad Plus loans and are pushed to private loans, now find themselves in a profession and have the tremendous, tremendous debt burden that cannot be relieved by public loan forgiveness. And so what you're going to find is for our populations who need it the most, the people who are going to be servicing them are not people who are going to look like them.
Thank you so much for that. Erica, what long-term effects could this have on diversity within the social work workforce, leadership, and academia?
Thank you, Angelique, for the question. The broader implications have been addressed, workforce shortages, but we really have to hone in on the variety of areas in the workforce that are going to be implicated, such as what was shared already: child welfare, mental health care clinics, healthcare, hospitals, schools, and community-based services. Many times we do not have social workers that linguistically appropriate, culturally responsive, that can serve our communities due to the barriers that we've already been talking about for years. And so having this will impact how service is being provided. There will be longer wait times and lower quality of care. There may be more disproportionately impact on communities of color without healthcare, mental health, and their physical health care. And also caregiving and public service professions are devalued on a federal level. And it's really discouraging pathways to those fields and careers for individuals that want to enter into that space. We really want to think about how also the individuals, many times we don't see ourselves represented in spaces such as academia, in leadership roles, and there is going to be barriers at the entry point that will ripple upward, not just downward, but upward, because we are going to have fewer MSW graduates, means fewer future supervisors, faculty members, researchers, and policy leaders from communities that may have been marginalized by society and underrepresented communities. And the profession's cultural competence and responsiveness could really suffer. We're going to see this ripple effect upward and downward. Welcome to New York.
Panelists, feel free to jump in if you have any additional thoughts around that question.
Yeah, I just want to second, what my panelists partners are saying here. Just think about it, right? Taking out non-governmental loans, right? And these are literally private loans. That's what we're talking about. And what that means, like I had to take out private loans myself, right? As a student, and they're still kicking me in the rear. So it means that interests are going to be higher. It means that when we talk about lack of income-driven repayment options, right? I also have governmental loans where you can do the income-driven repayment. So if you're just not making enough, you can send in verification that you're not making enough and your payment can certainly reduce or go to zero, right? So that will no longer be the case or an option. You also become ineligible for public service loan forgiveness, which is already under attack. Louisa also, spoke to, and my panelists as well also spoke to the idea of social work already. We're already trying to get payments, right? Just to increase our salaries. So if we are not being paid and or being recognized for the work that we do, the hard work that we do, right, in a multitude of different spaces, then public service careers, I mean, is that even going to be possible? We're already going to have a real deficit in people really trying to work within community services. All of that may potentially shift now to private areas where people are looking to make more money. So folks that who are in community centers may not be able to get the service that they desperately need.
Can I piggyback? Those are really excellent points, Dr. Kennedy, but I want to piggyback off something that Erica said that I think is really, really important, which is that the mental health workforce pipeline, that workforce pipeline really matters. And if we lose diverse students at the point of graduate entry, we're also losing future practitioners. And when we lose practitioners, we're also losing the future supervisors and administrators that we know are so important when we're talking about developing the careers of younger workers, supporting the careers of younger social workers. And if we lose that, we're also losing faculty. We're losing researchers. We're losing, CIFI supervisors. We're losing CIFI instructors. We're losing policymakers. We're losing the people that do this work every day. That one day, like it happened with me. the switch went off, and I decided that I wanted to do a policy work. And the key point there is that the representation that we want to see and the representation that we need to see in order for there to be equitable pathways, upward pathways in the profession, it's not by accident. That kind of representation does not happen by accident. It's built over years and decades of investment, of access, and intentional support. What this proposed change does is it cuts that off at the knees, because the people that we need to enter the profession are just not going to be able to. And it cuts the pipeline at its source. And there are estimates that say that this proposal is fairly new, but some very people that are smarter than me have already done a little bit of math around this. And they say that within 10 to 15 years, we could be looking at a social work profession and an academic social work field that is significantly less diverse than it is today. And today it is already pretty not as diverse as it could be, or as it should be, or as the communities that we serve need it to be. So I just wanted to drive that point home, because I think that something gets lost in the sauce when we just talk about the money. The money is important, but this has far-reaching implications for how social service delivery is delivered in this country. And, make no mistake about it, we are in a mental health crisis. We are in an opioid crisis. We have a crisis of gang violence. We have a mental health crisis in schools. The number of we have a school shooting every day in this country. It's not reported, but that is what is happening. So we are a country that severely needs the support and the help that social workers can provide. And if this goes through, we're cutting that off at the knees. And there's really no indication that there would be a sustainable way to come back from that.
And I'm just going to add to what Louisa's point is, right? And also our rural communities are already lacking, right? And if we're cutting the pipeline, then what does that mean for those communities who already do not have enough social workers?
As you were all talking, I was also thinking about the DSW. I'm a proud DSW. I love the opportunities that it creates in the profession for leadership, for supervision, for pathways to academia. And I think we're just beginning to see the potential impact of the DSW degree in bringing leaders, and especially leaders of color, into the profession. And so I know, Louisa, it's not all about numbers, but I'm also thinking about money. And like if the lifetime cap, right, for the loans is 100,000, it's going to decrease access to the DSW tremendously, which will be a barrier to people entering academia and also in leadership positions to be able to create change where change is necessary. And then I was also thinking about CIFI or CIFI supervisors who are doing free labor, right? Like that's basically essentially what we do in supervising students. And I can also imagine, an overall shift in the desire like as our profession feels less valuable, less representative, less seen in some ways, and there's less of us because it's going to increase, you know, a workforce shortage, that there will be people kind of pushing out of these volunteer roles, these service roles. And so, as you all said, kind of the lack of supervisors to be able to provide good supervisory experience for our MSW students.
I 100% agree, Dr. McBride. I am a proud DSW candidate myself right now. So this proposal hits very, very close to home. And you're right, you know, that is a direct pathway for social work leaders of color to advance in their careers, and we're cutting them off at the knees.
I truly believe that representation matters. And for the past few years, we have been really honing in on ensuring that we set an example to the future social workers that thought that they couldn't enter into this profession. Many students of color never thought that they can even graduate from a bachelor's program and yet get into a master's program. And we have been advocating by sharing our personal stories, our growth, the way a community continues to support each other, to really share how we show up in the space so we can mentor them into entering the profession. It has taken a lot of work, a lot of collective work. We've shared personal narratives through Latinx and social work, and we're going to continue sharing how important it is to be recognized as a profession. We recently decided to, with an incredible steering committee with Dr. Gabriela McBride, Dr. Richeline DeShield, Laudy Burgos, and myself, to really put out a call for proposals to ensure that many people can share their own personal narrative about how they entered the profession, how they're supporting communities with the social work profession, and how we can continue to advocate on a national level by sharing our stories. And the call for proposal is for all of you who are BIPOC individuals representing, sharing how your work in the profession matters. Because if we don't keep showing up for our communities, no one else will. And that is the point that I want to really hone in on, that mentorship and representation matters. And this really hurts all of the work that we have done collectively. But we're not going to stop now. We're not going to stop advocating for this profession and the students and all of the future social workers that are going to be serving our communities.
Thank you so much. Erica, continuing the conversation, social work is not alone in this, right? Education, nursing, other allied health professionals are also excluded under this redefinition. So what does this signal about how caregiving and public service professions are valued at the federal level?
This sends a really troubling message about how caregiving and public service careers are valued, because these fields require graduate level expertise and are essential to the national well-being, but yet may be treated as less deserving and less federal investment. We already are a country that does not honor well-being, that does not honor elders, that does not honor people with different abilities. I was standing in a line yesterday just at the airport and noticed that there were elders, there were people that were standing on the same line. On a national level, we do not honor individuals that need to be cared for. And so, in conclusion, we're not honoring the caregivers. We're not honoring the people that are caring for these individuals by doing this. And it really sends a message that that's not important. It really hones in on how capitalistic professions, how people are entering into professions that are going to just make money for them. And it's important. Social workers do make money as well. I'm going to state that. We do have a wonderful way to provide for our families entering into different spaces. But as a caregivers, with nurses, with social workers, it just shows that it's not important, and it's going to disrupt how we care for individuals. And it will really impact the physical and mental health well-being of people in our communities, but the ones that are going to be impacted the most are people that are marginalized by society, because when you have wealth, you get better access to healthcare. And many people may not have access to that. And without us being in those spaces, we're not going to be able to provide that really amazing quality of care for our communities.
Thank you so much. We did get a comment, Erica. You speak very softly, so folks want to hear what you have to say. You have so much important things to say. So we did get some comments from the audience that to project a little bit so we can hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for your responses, everybody. Louisa, let's move on to how we are responding to this, right? The Department of Education has stated that this proposal is not a judgment on the value of social work, but a technical redefinition for loan eligibility. How should we, and how do you respond to that claim? And panelists, feel free to chime in.
You know, with respect to the Department of Education, that's ridiculous, and I don't accept that framing of what they're saying. You know, this policy functionally prices people out of our profession. That's not neutral. I'm a social worker, and I'm taking it very personally, and I think we all need to take it very personally. Because, you know, regardless of what language they use, the intent, you know, as we learned in school, does not change the impact of this regulation. And you know, the Latino Social Work Coalition is really focused on this impact. I don't care what they're calling it or what they say it actually is. If this was truly a technical matter, and that there was no value judgment embedded in it, then we would expect to see an equity analysis. We would expect to see some kind of modeling to which student populations are most affected, which communities are going to lose services, and what the projected shortages are going to look like under the new loan caps. We haven't seen that. They haven't done that. If they had done that, they would have shown it to us, because that would be good faith work about why they want to make these changes. What we are seeing in this proposal is a complete devaluation of our entire profession and the communities that we serve. And it's wrapped in the language of bureaucracy, of tidiness. And I would also say, you know, the burden of proof shouldn't be on us to prove why we are needed. You can, you know, I live in New York City. I just have to walk down the 125th Street corridor and I can tell you why we're needed. I can walk down 42nd Street after a certain time and I can tell you why we're needed. I can go down into the train stations and I can tell you why we're needed. So it's up to them to tell us why this change is necessary and to prove to us that it's necessary. So until that case is made, and it's made compellingly, which it's not going to, I'm going to continue to call this what it is. It's a harmful policy, and it demands reversal. I demand for it to be reversed.
Yeah, excellent point. Excellent. And I also want to add, I mean, once we take a look at all those professions, right? We talk about all of the allied professions. Remember, most of them are female-driven professions, right? Female-driven professions. So we are already living in a country that historically have not recognized and honor women in general. And here we are now, our professions are under attack. Social work is a female-driven profession, right? And it's also, we have a number of service-oriented, you know, fields. Those social workers are in every facet of the community. We do just about everything, you know, but for the most part, the community work that we do, you know, it's predominantly women, and there is no reckoning or no evaluation that has come out to say this is what we need. This will provide better, you know, community care, service provision, et cetera, because we know it doesn't exist and we know this is intentional.
Thank you so much for that response, for those responses coming in. I want to go on to advocacy and action and moving forward and what that looks like for us. So Dr. Kennedy, continuing the conversation, and of course, panelists, feel free to chime in. What advocacy efforts are currently underway to challenge or amend this proposal?
Sure. So I'm going to put in the chat, I sort of collected all of these for folks to, hopefully I could get everything in there. Oh, I have too many words. Sorry. So I'm going to take out some out of here and cut some of this. So there are a couple of amendments here. Oh, it's not working. All right. So Representative Richie Torres has a bill that he is championing, and it is introduced the professional degree access restoration, which is moving the loan cap up to 50,000 and lifetime to 200,000. Let me see if I could, perfect, here we go. So that is the link to that particular proposal. Also, Mike Lawler, Republican candidate, is also introducing Professional Student Degree Act to broaden the definition of professional degrees to counter what we are seeing by the Department of Education. I will put that in the chat for you to explore that a little further. And we also have Representative Jill Takuda from Hawaii, and also Shamari Figures from Alabama is co-leading the Loan Equity for Advanced Professional, which is also called the LEAP Act, with Representative Tim Kennedy, of which NASW went to the initial introduction in Buffalo just a couple of weeks ago. So these are three, emerging acts that are coming up, conversations that are essentially happening. And these were essentially proposed in about December 2025 to early January 2026. So this is sort of fresh off of, someone's pen, right? Writing this out to ensure that folks are aware. So I ask those that are on this call, those that have registered, to please reach out to your representative and start talking about this, right? There are 61,000 social workers in the state of New York. But guess what? There are 800,000 of us, right, across the state. So, I mean, we command a large workforce, and we command a large voice as well, right? So as we think about building coalitions, in addition to these bills that are being proposed, I've had conversations with the Commission on Independent Colleges and Universities in New York, looking to collaborate with NASW. All of my colleagues here who are panelists also have been speaking about collaborative efforts as well. And NASW is raising public awareness, right? We have Social Work is a Profession, a Day of Solidarity. We'll put those links in the chat. We also have our Currents newsletter, where we have collected personal stories talking about, what does social work mean, to you, and what sort of impact will this particular proposal from the Department of Education have on you? Maybe not you particularly, but maybe on a family member, right? Let's start writing about those stories. I'm in a lot of educational spaces. I talk to my students about this as well, and to really ensure that we are elevating our voices. This is not the time to remain silent. Oftentimes social workers are too busy because we're so bogged down working for others and not uplifting ourselves. And this is the time to start to uplift ourselves and the profession. We've done sign-on letters, right? Affirming that the profession is important, and along with our other allied professions as well. So there's a number of things that's happening at the chapter level, a number of things that are happening with other panelists here that I'm sure they'll like to share and with you all tonight. But this is important. If there's any time, and I say it all the time is now. We have to get engaged and we need to be activated. The time is now.
That point, Dr. Kennedy, about us being too busy, I think we're also, our students are busy. And so for any of us who are MSW student facing, I just urge all of us to have conversations with students, to bring them up to Albany, to find opportunities for advocacy, to drop the links to these bills so that they understand how to read them, how to understand them, how to advocate, how to use them, how to use their voice. Because I think the same way, Dr. Kennedy, you're saying we get too busy, I think they get too busy and 2 years all of a sudden is done, right? And so it's also time for us within academic institutions and with professional organizations to kind of rally the call and have some real conversations. I just went up to as president of NASW-NY, and then also in my role at NYU, we just partnered with NASW up at C.A.R.E.S. So we went up to Albany for Capital Action Day, and it was a tremendous opportunity to really teach students what that advocacy piece is. And so we have a responsibility to do that. Go ahead, Louise.
Oh, no worries. Echoing everything that Dr. Kennedy and Dr. McBride just said. There's so much that we can do, and there's so much that the folks on the call and on the panel have been doing and will continue to do. It's really exciting. This is not a fun thing to have to collaborate on because this harms us all. But I think that we are all doing really great in convening, getting us all together, getting our voices together, and providing folks with the platforms that are necessary in order to uplift our voices and our concerns. NASW, as our professional association, you really are leading with urgency, which I appreciate, and all the work that you're doing in giving folks a platform to elevate our thoughts. Summits like this one, issuing of public statements, providing members with clear, actionable advocacy tools is really, really key. I have to commend our social work schools as well. Just off the top of my head, I saw that Fordham University Graduate School of Social Service is actually accelerating their enrollment period to the spring so that people can get in before the July 1st cutoff. I think that is brilliant, and more of our social work schools need to think of innovative ways of getting around this should the tide not turn. For practitioners, I think it's really important, especially those that work in community-based and nonprofit and public sector settings, to share your stories. I'm heartened to see that Siembra has this new initiative where you're doing a call for proposals for people to share your story. That is the place to do that, right? That is the place to do that and talk about how the workforce crisis is already affecting you. And if should this go through, how it's going to continue to just make things worse. And for students, I think students are our most powerful advocates of all because you're actually in it right now. This is not affecting you later. This is affecting you right now. Your testimony is so important on why you chose this field, on what it costs for you to get here, and what you stand to lose. I think that is irreplaceable testimony that could be so, so valuable. So I urge every student to take all of the opportunities that you can to speak up, to show up, and to submit comments. These legislators that have bills, that's a great place to start, but we all live in different places. And if you're joining us from New York State, you know who your elected officials are. But if you're joining us from anywhere else in the country, call your local elected officials, call your Congress members, call the members of the Senate, and tell them what this will do to you and the communities that you want to serve. And I'll use this as a plug for the Latino Social Work Coalition and for Social Workers for Justice. We're really focused on how we mobilize people and how we identify who the decision makers are in this space, because the Department of Education is going to do what the Department of Education does, right? With the current administration, they who shall not be named, they're going to do whatever they want. But there is a lot of power that Congress has here. So mobilizing people, doing that power analysis, which we'll be doing at the Congressional Research Institute in DC later on this month, and also in April. That is the space to really identify who the stakeholders are, who the decision makers are, who the people that can sway public opinion are, right? And seeing how we can get them to move if the Department of Education chooses to go forward with this. So there's plenty, you all just heard, there's plenty of opportunities for everybody to get involved and make your voices heard. We have a very limited amount of time in which to move here, and we should all be taking those opportunities as often and as quickly as possible.
Can everyone hear me? I want to just share a few thoughts now that the sirens are gone from this Long Island City area. I love everything that we've been talking about as a collective. The role of how professional associates, schools of social work, and practitioners and students can play between now and 2026 is so, so important. Submitting those public statements during rulemaking periods is so crucial. You have so much access, just right here, you have access to have your voice heard. Also, when you're meeting with your federal and state lawmakers, you have a toolkit already that you can really be able to hone in on and make sure that you are being clear about the message. And just as Louisa was saying, sharing the workforce data and the community impact stories are so key. We started in 2020 the Latinx in Social Work Volume 1, where we were sharing how there was not enough of us in the field that were representing the communities that needed to be served, the Latina, the Latinx communities of the diaspora. And now in 2025, 3 volumes later, we continue to build this pipeline, but now we have these barriers. And so what we decided, and actually I was in a meeting with Dr. Kennedy, and this is when it honed in. We were just talking about something like, well, you know what? Volume 4 is going to be Latinx, Latina in social work. Social work is a profession, and we are going to make it accessible for everyone to submit their proposals by just going through the administration fee and then having a blind selection process that is being steered by the incredible Dr. Gabriela McBride, Dr. Rishaline DeShield, and this book is going to be co-authored by Laudy Burgos and myself, and we want to continue to uplift the voices and the stories that need to be told. So please make sure you follow Siembra today, follow Latinx in social work. We just announced it today. We were very intentional about the announcement because we wanted to make sure that everyone had access. Check out how you can submit your proposal, how you can submit your story, and ensure that you share it with your community, because this does not stop here. There's different types of advocacy, and this is one. On a national level, we will not be silent, and neither should you. You have us as partners, and this coalition will continue to be building. And we have to also build coalitions with the other nursing, education, and public health leaders. And number one thing that I definitely recommend we all do is we start educating students about financial planning. It is so key. It is so key to make sure that they know how to plan financially for their future. We were not taught that. I know I wasn't. I don't come from generational wealth. So when we start teaching our students at an early age, we are more powerful because we know that we have planned for our own success. But sometimes money is not talked about in the household, and planning is definitely not encouraged. If you're coming from communities that have been marginalized by society and we're just really struggling to survive. So Siembra today will also be leading workshops, free workshops for free CEs on how to incorporate financial planning into the work that we are doing, because it cannot stop here. We will continue to ensure that our communities are being served. So thank you. Thank you for that opportunity to share that.
I want to jump in. I just wanted to jump in here, right? So we have a number of students on the call right now, and what we are saying may sound like a real huge heavy lift, right? And I remember one of my college professors said to me, if you could write a sentence, you could write a book. If you could write a sentence, you could write an article, right? And an article is just a sequence of sentences. right? And then we're asking you to insert your personal experiences. It's your experience, it's your story. And I think that's how you start to begin to unpack it, right? So it doesn't feel and view to be something so overwhelming, like, oh my goodness, how can I be in this book? How can I even submit an article? Right. So I just want to let folks know that all the things that we're talking about are really accessible. They're really accessible. And we want you, and I'm sure I could speak from my panelists here, we want you to really reach out to us, ask questions, submit, right? And even if, it's not perfect, we'll look at it, it's going to be reviewed and say, look, maybe tweak this or do this so you can submit again. Your voices matter. Your voices matter.
Thank you for that. We have time for one question. Before I do that, I would like to thank the organizations that supported this. NASW-NY, of course, Gabriela McBride, Latino Social Work Coalition, Siembra Today, as well as the Association of Black Social Workers, the New York City chapter, and the Social Worker Ladies Collective. I apologize if I mispronounced that. So our last question of the evening is, looking ahead, what concerns you most if this proposal moves forward as planned? And we've kind of covered a lot of ground around that, but feel free. And what gives you hope about the profession's ability to respond? This is for all of our panelists today.
I feel that the greatest concern is a shrinking, less diverse population entering a profession that's already faced multiple traumas. We already have a high demand for the service that we truly provide and the quality service that we provide. So what gives hope, though, is that social work is strong in advocacy. We are really strong as that coalition, as a collective. We wear multiple hats. We're in multiple spaces. We're not just in mental health clinics. We're not just in hospitals. We are everywhere. So if all of us come together in all areas that we are in, we can really build a stronger coalition. We are not just community-based social workers. We're not just in the classrooms, in the schools. We're everywhere. So make sure that we are represented everywhere, and make sure that you continue to uplift and speak proudly of what you do and who you are. I always introduce myself. Hi, America Sandoval. I'm one of 3 social workers in my family. It is not an accident that there's 3 of us in the family. We believe in caring for our community. We believe in public service, and we have to continue to speak up.
Along the same lines, the concern for me is the damage that this is going to do to our communities, and it's not going to be, a catastrophic one and done dramatic event. It's going to be a slow erosion to our communities. Fewer students of color entering programs, more graduates potentially leaving nonprofit work for private practice out of financial necessity. More communities going without services. We already know what that looks like in terms of funding, in terms of the slowness in getting paid. All of that is going to happen, and it's going to happen without a headline and without a bang, and that is very, very dangerous for where we are right now. So that's my main concern here. And then, what gives me hope, I agree with Erica. We are not a profession that's claims defeat easily. I think the skills that are necessary to combat this, we all have them. Our profession is rooted in advocacy and in action. That's how we started. So we know how to get back to those roots. We're a community of organizers, of advocates, of community builders. So the faster we reach back into our history and access those skills, the more clarity there's going to be around forming coalitions, around partnering with allies, around harnessing the passion of our students and our practitioners and demanding that we heard. So that gives me a lot of hope. And I'm holding on to that. I'm holding on to that because I know that we can fight this. We just have to do it together.
I echo all of this, both the concerns as well as the hope. I also hold hope that this might be a turning point for social work education. You know, I'm a social work educator to my core, and I think we've been having some, big conversations in social work education around unpaid labor, around the pay for placement movement, around what it means to ask our students to do 900 or 1,200 hours. And I think we're shifting to a place where institutions of higher education are really going to have hard conversations around what we do and how we do it. And I'm hearing those conversations in my NYU spaces. And Louisa, you brought up how Fordham, is starting to accelerate and respond to what is happening. And so I think people are talking and people are engaging within the higher education space of what does this mean for how we do things and how we cannot conduct business as usual. And it could really, to this point, Erica and Louisa, that you're driving home of like collective and organizing, that I'm really feeling hopeful there might be a level of organizing at the higher education level as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. And let me add, what concerns me is the fact that I'm not sure if everyone is aware of what's going on. There are a number of folks that, when I engage in conversation around these issues, we're like, wait a minute, I wasn't aware of that, where do I get this information from, right? So are we doing enough to really amplify these issues that are impacting this profession? I think that's something that really concerns me. And then what gives me hope is that 30,000 social workers completed the comments, right? The public comments for this particular action by the Department of Education, right? So it gives me hope because one, I saw it all over LinkedIn. People were sharing, they were tagging their friends, right? So what gives me hope is social media using it as a tool for, this collective advocacy that we're speaking of right now, right? We know how to do boots on the ground, but what we also need to know how to do is counter the social media space and how do we get in there and do a quick message and TikTok, right? And start tagging and get more than enough views so the word is getting out. So that's, I think so for me it's really mixed there as well.
Once again, thank you. As we close this event, I want to thank Dr. McBride, Luisa Lopez, Erica Sandoval, and of course, Dr. Kennedy, and our partners, Siembra Today, Latino Social Work Coalition, NASW-NY, the Association of Black Social Workers New York City chapter, and the Social Workers Ladies Collective. We're so happy to have had this opportunity to have this discussion. Attendees, very important for you all to know, in a post-event email, you receive all of the resources that we've provided in addition to others. We will also give you access to our Day of Solidarity action that will be happening later in the month. You'll have all access to that information. So please stay tuned for that. Once again, panelists, before you go, let me take a quick, everybody smile. Let me take a quick screenshot of everybody, please. Thank you very much. Bada bing, very much done. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you, everyone, our attendees and our panelists. Also, we have a full lineup of Social Work Month series events that are coming up throughout the month and ways to engage with the chapter. And that will also be included in that post-event email. Once again, thank you all for being here. I'm going to stop the recording shortly. Thank you all.
Okay.